Shalom to Rabbi Marc Schneier, president of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding and an advisor to many Gulf leaders.
Shalom, my friend.
So you participated in the Abraham Accords ceremony. Tell us about the experience.
Oh, it was, personally, it was an amazing experience. I mean, I've been leading this interfaith platform and channel, in the Gulf for more than 10 years. I first entered the Gulf under the patronage of the late King of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah, who then introduced me back in 2011 to the King of Bahrain. I first met with His Majesty at his royal palace in Manama. And from the first day I met the King of Bahrain, he had expressed to me his desire, his willingness to establish relations with Israel. He said to me repeatedly that our only guarantee for a strong, moderate Arab presence in the Gulf would be a strong Israel. Let's remember it was the King of Bahrain who in 2015 led the GCC in legislating Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. So if there's anyone who is deserving of that recognition, it's the King of Bahrain. And to have the Prime Minister of Israel with the two foreign ministers of the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain was truly an historic and extraordinary experience.
What's the main motivation? What is pushing these countries to proceed in terms of deals and normalization with Israel?
Well, there have been a number of contributing factors that have created the tension to make this deal. I often say how in life, no tension, no deal. So what are the contributing factors? Number one, combating COVID-19 needs a regional approach where both Israel and the Gulf could benefit from each other. Second, many of the Gulf states were concerned about Israel's possible move in annexation, either annexing part or the entire West Bank area. And the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain, with the normalization of ties, believe that they have rescued the two-state solution for the Palestinians. Then you have many economic challenges and transformations going on in the Gulf, and how many Gulf leaders over the years have said to me, Rabbi, with our resources and wealth and Israel's brain trust and technology, we could develop the most powerful economic region in the world. And fourth, you have this ongoing, continuing existentialist threat coming from Iran, which both Israel and the Gulf share in common. And I believe that the Gulf states are now looking to Israel to be their defender and protector, and to begin to rely less on the United States. When you have such a great economic and military power right in your backyard, in your own neighborhood, why do you have to go thousands of miles away? So I think that many of the Gulf states are now looking to Israel to serve in that capacity. And from an economic point of view, it's tremendous boon and opportunity for both Israelis and for the Emiratis and the Bahrainians, whether it's in the fields of technology, commerce, travel, tourism. It's a win-win for all sides.
Now, really regarding annexation, many Israeli officials are saying it's just being postponed. Are you saying that it is being canceled?
I believe it's been canceled. There was a survey done in Israel several weeks ago after the UAE announcement that if you had to choose between peace and annexation, 85% supported peace. There is no question that these normalization ties will also bring wonderful opportunities for the Palestinians, particularly in the economic sphere and realm. I sense and I hear from Gulf leaders how they recognize their role in bringing about an Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation in terms of being able to bring to the Palestinians economic incentives, economic opportunities, economic empowerment, economic hope. So across the board, this is a wonderful opportunity for the Israelis, for the citizens of the Gulf, for the Palestinians.
Netanyahu is saying that this is peace for peace, not peace for land. Do you think that as we're talking about the Palestinian issue, we're going to also see concessions, Israeli concessions, regarding giving land away to the Palestinians following these deals?
Well, again, I don't think there's a concern here if Israel were to move in that direction. I mean, Israel will never give back areas like Ma'ale Adumim or Efrat or other major metropolises and cities in the West Bank. But the Saudi Peace Initiative of 2002 took all that into account, where they came up with the idea of swapping land. So let's say Israel was to annex 15% of the West Bank, they would then give the Palestinians an equal proportion of 15% from the Negev. So this isn't anything really new here, but what was clear on terms of the perspective of UAE and Bahrain, that if they did not do something drastic, that the two-state solution would have come to an end, with annexation. And anyone who suggests, I've been reading, different pundits saying, you see, the Arab states, they no longer care about the Palestinian people. I'm telling you, anyone who suggests that is simply dead wrong. They're very concerned about the plight of the Palestinian people. But as I witnessed in the Peace to Prosperity conference last year in Bahrain, in Manama, that there are those of us who believe that the road to reconciliation is through economics. It's not about geography. It's not about topography. It's about making sure that the Palestinian people deserve a certain quality of life, from a financial, economic, and prosperous perspective. And that is an area where the Gulf states can be very, very helpful.
So what's next in this process? Are really more countries coming in?
When it was just UAE 4 weeks ago, you could have made the argument that's a one-off deal. Where the other 5 Gulf states. Now that there's UAE and Bahrain, that's the beginning of a trend. And momentum in the Gulf is now about normalizing ties, making peace with Israel, establishing relations. That's the direction that the Gulf is moving on. Now, the mistake many people make is that they look at the GCC, they look at the Gulf states as being a monolithic entity. You'll find that each country, that's Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Oman, they all have their own particular challenges and issues. If you were to ask me, well, what's happening with the Saudis, I would tell you that within Saudi Arabia, establishing relations with Israel is more of a generational conflict. I know that the Crown Prince and that generation would like to. In fact, I was told by the Crown Prince and his brother, Prince Khalid, who's a former Saudi ambassador to the United States, that Vision 2030, which is the economic transformation of the Saudi kingdom, they said to me it will only succeed with the participation of Israel. Qatar, that's always the dark horse in this competition. Remember, in the last 7 years, there has been no other Gulf state that has worked publicly with the state of Israel than Qatar. Qatar bringing humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza. That's not only with the blessing of the Israelis, it's at the request of the Israelis. Oman is probably the next Gulf state in line. Let's remember that Oman has a new sultan who has not made it public his feelings about establishing relations, but everything points to his wanting to do that. You know, the Sultanese of Oman was one of the first to commend and to applaud the peace agreements with the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. And then the last country is Kuwait, which hasn't even come out of the starting gate yet. But my sense, if all 5 members of the GCC, the other 5 members, establish relations with Israel, then Kuwait will ultimately follow. That's my overview for the Gulf.
So, Rabbi Schneier, is this only mainly economic peace?
No, I think it's much more than just economic partnerships and economic investments. Let's remember, there are no 2 other faith communities in the world have more in common than Judaism and Islam. We are the children of Abraham. Remember my book that I co-authored with the Imam Shamsi Ali, the only book ever written by Rabbi and Imam, is titled The Sons of Abraham, where we address the issues that unite and divide Muslims and Jews, which today is the definitive text in Muslim-Jewish relations globally. So I feel that Muslims and Jews are coming to a place of recognizing not only our common faith, but our common fate, and how our single destiny, particularly in the Middle East region, must strengthen our bonds of concern, compassion, and caring for each other. There's a natural affinity. How many times has the King of Bahrain or the Emir of Qatar reminded me, Rabbi, remember, we're family. Doesn't mean we haven't had a few family disagreements, but we're still family. No 2 other faith communities can really point to that familial bond. It's only Jews and Muslims, Judaism and Islam.
Rabbi Marc Schneier, chairman of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding and advisor to many Gulf leaders, thank you very much for joining us, and Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.